Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Candace Smiley. Here we trust the ningle and we tell the truth. This is a podcast. We are looking to have conversations that matter, conversations that take courage to engage in, where we cut through the noise that exists online to bring you incredible content, amazing speakers, and stories to inspire you to live your best, listen to yourself, and tell the truth of who you are and who you just might become. All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I am your host, Candace Smiley, and my guests today are Ellie and Erin. And I had the pleasure of being on their podcast a while ago, and it was just, it was fun. It was so much fun. And we talked about some amazing things, and I absolutely cannot wait to open up the conversation today. It's International Women's Day, which I was just reminded of. In New Zealand, where these ladies are from. And so we are going to be chatting about all things women and amazing and goddess. And before we get too far into the amazing conversation, ladies, can you give, my listeners a quick little bio on who you are, either one or both, or however you want to make that happen? And then let's get back to enjoying our coffee conversation.
I cannot wait. My name is Ellie Bell. You'll recognise me because I'm the one with the English accent. So I'm originally from the UK. I've been over in New Zealand for a number of years now. And my background was all things corporate, very male-dominated world. I worked in sport for many, many years. So I dealt with a lot of that sort of stuff. And it was great, but I always knew it wasn't where I was meant to be. So about 6 years ago, I retrained as a life coach, and I've been supporting women to basically own their awesomeness for the last few years. And last year I was lucky enough to meet Erin, and we sort of started chatting, and we haven't stopped yet. We have many, many words between us, and we have created a business where we get to support women do exactly what I said, to become amazing and wonderful and own their beauty, to stand in their truth, to be authentic, to be brave, to be bold, to be the change that the world needs. And I couldn't do it without Erin by my side, because we come at it from two different approaches. I'm very much the human side, so I'm all about the beliefs, the shadow, the inner child work, all of the stuff that we've been through in our human lives, and Erin brings the beautiful extra stuff, all the spiritual elements and the past. And I'm going to hand over to her so she can explain it, because she does it way better than me, but she's an absolute goddess, and I'm thrilled and lucky to have her as my business partner.
Bless you. I'm not sure what to say to that. I am Erin. I am the other half of Awakening the Wise Woman, as Ellie alluded to, and I'm the spiritual side of the business, I guess, although Ellie really underplays her value in that space, I think. So I am a wife and mother of two, and as you can tell by my accent, I am a legit Kiwi, not an import. And I am a psychic medium. I am a spiritual healer. I work with ancestors and energy and spirit and all of those beautiful things, and feel very blessed to do so, and feel even more blessed to do so alongside Ellie, who is a phenomenal coach and a phenomenal woman and a very, very dear friend. So I'm very grateful to be here with another phenomenal woman. Candace, thank you so much for inviting us to come and be on your podcast. I love what you do and what you talk about. And so I'm just excited to be part of the conversation today and see where it goes.
Me too. I mean, my listeners know that there's always like this pre-chat. I must remember to hit the, record button on the pre-chat, because sometimes we get into some juicy stuff and I'm like, oh, that was like the whole podcast, like right there. Yeah. As we tune in. And I mean, one of the amazing things that you guys are up to right now, of course, is this Awakening the Wise Woman, which I just think is amazing. And I'm all about words. And so the fact that you put things like awake and awakening and wise woman all in the same sentence just kind of gives me goosebumps. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I know you guys are loving what you're doing right now for that course, and just sort of dive into that. And some of the conversations we enjoyed last time were about, masculinity and the femininity. And I think that is such a hot topic right now, almost an undercurrent, which I just absolutely love that some of us are brave enough to bring it up and start talking about it overtly. So that's kind of what I'm hoping we can cover today, but I'll pass the call back over to you, ladies.
You're so right about that sort of undercurrent, and it feels every now and then like it sort of rises up a little bit more and it sort of overspills, and then everyone sort of gets a little bit antsy and it sort of drifts back again, and I just can't wait until it kind of just explodes out and there's no holding it back. But it is, and I mean we'll dive into all the work we do, but I just want to touch on that. Women have been told for so long to behave and to be quiet and to you can do all the things, but as long as you do it within these set of boundaries and don't upset anyone and put everybody else's feelings and thoughts ahead of their own, that it actually doesn't give an awful lot of space for being the versions that we want to be. And it is really difficult. It is really scary to put yourself out there, because sometimes people don't like what you say, and that can be deeply uncomfortable, and working through that is a challenge in itself. But if we can have more conversations like this, then hopefully people will listen and share, and more people will do it, and slowly the momentum will gather and grow, and there will be no holding us back. And I can't wait to see that day when it's it's no longer sort of taboo to talk about the fact that women are the change the world needs. That is firmly what I believe, and we are all about doing that here at Awakening the Wise Woman. And we've just been sharing a little sort of workshop series about awakening your goddess mindset, because that's something that we believe can really, really help in making those changes. The goddess mindset, I'm actually going to get Erin to describe it, because she always has the most beautiful words around it, and I kind of I know what I want to say, but she just puts it beautifully. She phrases it so she's a wordsmith. And go on, tell us the goddess mindset, Erin, because I know that you're going to nail this. No pressure, by the way, my friend.
No pressure felt. I think so. The goddess mindset for me is about we talk a lot about having connection with the natural cycles, and really diving deep into our radical self-acceptance and compassion for ourselves, and coming from a place where we're deeply connected to our intuition, and then we bring in these energies as well, these beautiful things like the universal energies, elemental energies, energies of the moon, and all of those types of things. And for me, being in the goddess mindset is about really having clarity around who I am at my core, not who people tell me I am, not who the world sees necessarily, but who I am in my own oneness with the universe. And then really knowing what parts of myself don't serve me well, and what parts of myself I need to do the healing work and apply the compassion and those kinds of things. And then really being having enough courage to share that with the world, right? It's that clarity and that confidence, and the courage to be able to stand up and say, I know that not everyone is going to like me. In fact, I know some people are really going to hate me. And I know that because my 7-year-old told me this morning that he hated me because I was making him go to school. Yes. Right. Bless them. But I think, the goddess mindset is about really being fearless in who we are. And I'm very fortunate that for me, a large part of sharing who I am with the world and doing what I do is that I get to have my brave right alongside me in the form of Ellie. There's nothing more rewarding than having someone stand beside you and say, actually, I know you've got this, and even when you don't know that, I'll hold that belief for you. And I think we're seeing more and more women creating those connections that allow that brave to come forward and allow us to be bold enough to say, I'm going to do something, and even if it doesn't go the way I want it to, I'm going to do it again, and then I'm going to do it again, and I'm just going to keep doing it because the world needs it. So that, to me, that's what the goddess mindset is. It's about having grace for yourself, and understanding that you are human. And even though you're a spiritual being, you are having a human experience, and that brings limitations and challenges that we aren't always comfortable with, and that's okay. But being able to have compassion for ourselves around that and say, actually, I'm going to just show up the best I can every day, and some days that's going to work out well, and other days I'm going to crumble in a heap on the floor. Either way, as long as I'm following what I believe to be true for me, I'm doing the right thing. And so that's kind of what we help people with, I guess, is inside of our program. We have the 12-month journey in She Awakens, which is our sort of flagship program. And that's what we work through. We work through this process of understanding who we are, and like we term that self-mastery, that space where you really sort of explore what your truth is and who you are and who you want to be and who you don't want to be. And then we go through that healing process of letting go of the conditioning, the ancestral wounds, the past life wounds, the witch wound, and all of those things that people are starting to talk about. We start to do all the healing work around that, and then we step into that expansiveness, right? That who was I born to be? What am I here for? And how can I show up every day honoring that and honoring who I am? And giving myself permission to be me allows everybody around me to do the same for themselves. And that part right there, that's the expansion. That's how we create change that is meaningful for everybody, not just for the people who are making the change. So and I think that's probably the difference for me between the feminine energy that we're seeing rise and the masculine energy that the patriarchal systems are created around, is that actually it is designed for everybody to rise and everybody to win. And that is absolutely something I know that you buy into as well, Candice, and I love that.
Big time, right? And
yeah.
I love when I get around. I mean, one of the reasons you guys are my favorites, to connect with, is we sort of have this understanding, right? And we're stepping into our biggest selves, right? The the big self. And that's not always easy. It was really entertaining recently. My beautiful VA, who's one of those women who runs alongside of me, right? So I can be my biggest and my best. She pushed me to put some stuff on YouTube because I had a whole bunch of new followers. And wouldn't you know it, my most recent podcasts have been a whole lot more tuned in to what I really think. And wouldn't you know it, I lost a few, and I just burst out laughing. I remember thinking, well, they're obviously not my tribe. And that was a really interesting conversation, because you were just talking about, how easy or how much easier it is to run because you've got this person who holds space for you. And you're right. Myself, I'm thinking of a couple of women who've recently become really close to me. We all sort of had the same conversation where we went almost with like this nervous energy of, I really want more with you. I want more with women in general, but I really want more with you. And it feels weird and awkward. And I don't know how to have a deep, meaningful relationship, but I just know that my feminine heart is longing for this. What does that look like? And that's been a really neat thing for me coming into 2022, is finding that feeling of safety. Like you say, it takes courage to show up, even in your friendships. You can go through friendships where you've never been that honest and transparent.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I love what you talk about, like that sort of slightly awkward conversation that you have with people, that it's like, you're sort of just testing a little bit, just putting a little bit of what you think out there just to see how it's taken. And then it's like, oh, they like it. And then it's like, oh, it's so exciting. I found somebody I can be completely me with. And it's just, oh my God, that feeling, that sense of relief that you've got somewhere to just like explore all of these things. And I think that's what I love about the work that Erin and I do, and the opportunity it gives us. Like, she challenges me on so many of my conditioned thoughts of the way that I think that, that I've thought the world should be. And now I'm like having this wonderful experience of like exploring what I actually think to be true and what I don't. And that for me has just been like mind-blowing. I was brought up in, a wonderful world. It was very easy. It was a very, conservative. It was, I went to a good school. I had I had everything. There was no major traumas. I mean, of course there was still the usual things that teenagers, go through, and there were a number of things that were unpleasant, but on the whole it was a very privileged, and I use that word because it is such a huge word in this day. It was a very privileged upbringing I had, and I love the fact that I'm now exploring so many of those thoughts that I just took as standard, and I just took other people's opinions as truth. and now I'm working out what my own is. And that, to me, like, that growth has just been staggering, and I love it. And we were just very briefly talking earlier about how I had an opportunity to chat with an 18-year-old the other day who was just like listening to, I think we worked out their Gen Z, but just listening to how clear they are on what their boundaries are, what their values are, and they are willing to just be totally like, this is what's okay with me. And I just think back to being that age, there's no way I could have done that. I was chatting with a friend who I walk with most mornings, and we were talking about this, and we were saying, in the space of work, you know, there's often conversations about, oh, you know, these youngsters, they just expect to get an easy ride, they expect to, you know, get what they want without having to work for it. And it's like, but why should they? Maybe they've got it right. Maybe we're the ones who've got it.
Yeah.
What do we want it to be really hard? Is that, or is it because it was hard for us, we want it to be hard for the others? And I just love this like new way of thinking that is coming through. And boy, it challenges me, but God, I love it. I love the fact that I get to explore this stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's two things to that, right? Like, the first thing is that it's a monster of our own making in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
right? Like, I absolutely, hands down, hope that one day your girls, and I'm sure they will be, all three of them, will be running the world, because that's a good reason to be like absolutely quaking in your boots if you're anybody who doesn't buy into you know, the new way of thinking, and that everybody should have power, and there is no sort of hierarchy here. And I think that for me, that's very much like, because we are conscious women, because we've done the work to strip back some of that conditioning, they're going to do more of it, right?
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
And that evolution of humanity is both terrifying and seriously exciting all at once, right? And the discomfort that my parents feel when they have conversations with with their granddaughter, my niece, who is in her early teens, you know, like, I can see the discomfort in some of the ways that she challenges them around what they believe the world should be, or what they've created for themselves even. And I love that, you know, my parents, they're pretty conservative, they're pretty I wouldn't say set in their ways, but they certainly grew up in small town New Zealand, which is probably like small town everywhere. And, you know, they lean in a little, and I see them lean in a little, and that excites me because it gives her the freedom to carry on. And, you know, and then she, you know, she's 13. I look at Ellie's daughters, you know, her youngest is not even 3 yet. And I'm like, that's going to be a whole nother wave. Right. And that's exciting for me. And the exciting thing for me is that I parent boys. And so I have the opportunity to raise young men who understand their femininity and who embrace it, and who embrace women who balance that feminine and masculine, and don't feel the need to be masculine in order to fit with them. Right. So I'm loving that challenge. But the other thing that came up for me there was just around what you said about that feminine heart, like desiring the connection, the deep, like soul deep connection, the sisterhood. And for me, I think part of that is about understanding that actually you've done a load of hard work, a bucket load of hard work. I was trying to think of a nice way to say that. Didn't work the first time, sorry. But, you know, like, you have done a lot of work to really be uncomfortable, right? And strip back all of the stuff that makes you conform, that makes you feel comfortable. You've stripped that back, and we're seeing other women start to do that too. And that's why that rising is happening, and that's exciting, right? Like, that knowing that the reason that I connected with Ellie you know, and I firmly believe that Ellie and I have been connected in many, many lifetimes. This is not a first time rodeo for either of us
No, I was
in
gonna
this
say,
relationship.
long time, guys.
Yeah. And, you know, and I'm blessed to have that with several people in my life. But the work that I do with Ellie and the connection that we had almost immediately, and I would say, Candace, you're probably someone else who I immediately was like, I understand that woman. Like, I feel
Right?
like her skin is the same as mine.
Yes.
Right. And I think that we're starting to see that as we start to strip back the stuff that this lifetime has generated for us, and we're starting to like deal with some of that inherited stuff, we're starting to see that actually there is so much more to who we are than what we've ever been told we could imagine. And having other women do that around you, oh man, that's inspiring, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just love it. I could, and I tell this to Ellie all the time, I'm like, I could just sit here and watch you work all day because it is phenomenal.
Sometimes
Like,
she tells me she's done, like if the thing is on, she's like, I was just watching you work because you just look really concentrated. I'm like, whoa, man, that is creepy, but I love that you tell me you do that.
There's that energy, so I totally get it. I've been thinking a lot about, people like yourself, right? I feel like the same way. I can echo that statement. People like my VA, right? A woman who just sort of seemed to understand me like instantly. And yes, the same person. And then you hear about things, you're like, oh, we agree the same. Right. And you realize that I think, that there may have been, lifetimes where we did the clearing work for this life, right? That we're like, okay, and we'll meet back and break, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of that happening. Like you say, as we strip that off, then we're able to remember. And it's a really great feeling because, I mean, the first part of my life, well, you guys have heard my story, but the first 20 years was a lot of like healing and getting through some of that stuff where a lot of relationships were not clear and they needed to be cleared. And now in this new era where I'm like, oh, we're clear. This is awesome. We can go straight to being friends. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting space because then it's almost like the friendships are holding space. And it's interesting, like you say, the expansion, because that's something I've been very much feeling since I've been doing the healing work. It's just how much more is possible, not even just like on the grander scale. Because yes, my daughter, the minute I was pregnant with her, I was tired. And I remember thinking, this girl's going to be a game changer because I'm already exhausted. And she has continued to push me, push barriers, push out those things that I thought I had figured out because of who she is. So yeah, look out. But it's like one of those things where it's like there's so much expansion in space, which I think is a very feminine thing, right? The womb literally expands to create life. And as we're coming together, we're creating this space where we're like, what kind of a world do we want our children to grow up in? And how can we set that so they can stand on our shoulders and create more of an exclusive space? And I think that's why we're seeing so many of these conversations happen about things like privilege and, Black Lives Matter and some of these things. It's a very inclusive conversation that we're looking to create, LGBTQ, right? That kind of stuff. We're looking for an exclusive, like, as women rise, we create a space for everyone to rise. And those interesting conversations are happening. So, but of course, that challenges a lot of the thoughts.
Way of thinking.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
We'll call it that for now.
Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about that, that I guess the concept of a whole pile of women coming together in this lifetime, that we've cleared the way for that in this lifetime. And I think if you subscribe to the concept of being spiritual beings having a human experience, and you reference some of the things that are happening in the universe of late, like we've moved into the age of Aquarius and all of that sort of stuff, and there's this like really rising consciousness that humanity is killing itself off through the patriarchy, right? Like we are absolutely destroying every structure that supports life and expansiveness and thriving in the world. And I think there's a conversation that has to happen around the fact that we, as spiritual beings, we have chosen to be here in this moment for a reason. And I firmly believe that a large part of that is about choosing to be here with the others that we are connected to, right? It was like everybody joined and was just like, hey, let's just all hang out on the trash fire that is the world, let's just all hang out and see what we can do together and enjoy each other's time and energy and come together and collectivize and make change. And so you're right. I think there is a real need to understand that actually, like, we have chosen to be here. At part of our mission in this lifetime is to connect with other women and help them rise, and be unafraid to put our hand down and say, here, I'll help you up, while at the same time putting our hand up saying, please help me up. Right? Like, and that's
and
really
there's no
vulnerable.
loss or gain in that. That's a really interesting thing that people have been saying lately. Well, it's not a hand up, and even in some of the like businesses and relationships and stuff, because I've been, the world's been opening up recently, which is wonderful. And there's been a distinct change in how things are being done. And that's been really interesting to sort of like take a step back and watch and be like, oh, it used to be like this, and it's clearly not anymore. And I'm kind of glad, to be honest.
Necessary change
is needed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what we're witnessing at the moment is global change, and just seeing the coming together against behaviors that are just so far from okay, but like people are way more willing to stand up and just call it out and say no, and put pressure on the people in power to make changes and to say, look, this isn't okay. And I think that's what I hate that we're having to go through it, but at the same time it's really interesting watching how the world has changed and how this conscious awareness of what is going on and what's right. Like, there just seems to be a bit more understanding that actually it's about humanity, it's about the common good, it's about doing what is right for everybody. And I just, with every part of my being, hope that this is the start of it really becoming the way we live, because I don't understand why just because you happen to have been born in one country you shouldn't be entitled to, like, who decided that the world was divided up and nobody got to move? Like, I find myself in this space where I'm just like, there's so much wrong, but actually we're starting to see people challenge it, and there are some incredibly brave people who are risking their lives to do this, and it's inspiring. It blows my mind, and I just hope that we get to witness the change, and that the world does move to a better place, because it's scary at the moment. It's really scary, but at the same time there's this sort of little glimmer of light that actually maybe something different is maybe there's gonna be a different outcome this time, and certainly I hope there is.
Right. It's one of those things where we're hoping for that next level, and we need to be calling it in. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised that it's coming in with a little bit of there's some energy. Right. Change is rarely comfortable, but I think it's been quite interesting. So my original career was, I was going to be a nurse. I wanted to be a nurse practitioner, travel the world, and do the Doctors Without Borders thing. I wanted to be a midwife. So I had some big plans, and then things happened and I changed my mind. However, I can very clearly remember and recognize like some of the, like, where we are to where we're going to go. Huge changes even from that space, and now the world's becoming this, like, it's so much tighter and closer than it has been, and that's been interesting. I mean, even I've been talking to more people from across various ponds than I have even in my own backyard, and feeling this tribe energy. It's like, oh, you're over there. And you're over there. We should hang out together.
Joining everyone together, and it's just it's incredible, like the connections that are being accepted and made at the moment. It's beautiful, and that's you're right, change is never comfortable. It's whether it's moving house or changing your hairstyle, like it's always uncomfortable. But what the world is going through at the moment, like, geez, we're talking about a big shift at the moment, and there's a lot that makes it deeply uncomfortable. And having spaces where you can talk about it and talk openly about it, and not worry about being judged, not worry about be challenged, but in a way that allows you to explore your truth and dive into it a little bit deeper, and be like, oh, does that feel right? Is that the right jacket for me, or do I need a different one? And be able to explore it, because if we don't do that, then we will just keep repeating the same things will keep on happening. We have to be willing to make it different this time, and that does involve some conversation and, identifying where the things don't fit. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive, certainly.
What I love about that is that you said that you originally, your plan was to go and do Doctors Without Borders, or Medicine Without Borders, or whatever, and and be a midwife. And I think if you reframe what you're doing, actually that's exactly what you're doing, right? Like you're providing your medicine in the world in a way that doesn't require borders to be acknowledged, but creates an inclusive space, and you're birthing a new way of being, and you're helping others do the same. And I think we, as women, we get really stuck in being told that certain things have value. Like you would have more value in the world if you'd gone and done that, right, in a physical way. But actually, I think the value that we have right now is in honoring ourselves, honoring what our souls are telling us is necessary for us to be the change, for us to step up and embrace our feminine power, but also do that with a hefty dose of masculine. Like it's no good to sit here and just be like, we need to create all of these things, and we still have to take action, right? And that's where I think we're starting to notice, people are starting to notice, right? Like there's a lot of women out there who have felt this for some time, and have felt this rising, and have desired change, and they've mapped it all out, right? Like they have all of the answers, but they haven't taken any action towards it. And that takes courage. It takes fearlessness. It's not about being unafraid, but it's about understanding that the fear has to be less than the love. If you can do that, you're going to win. Right. And so that's kind of where I think your work and our work meet in the middle and kind of converge in that space of actual magic. Yeah. And it's a beautiful space to be in. And I, welcome connection with anyone who wants to reside there with us, because that's where we need to be in order to show everyone what light can come to the world. Because when we collectivize, that's when we win the game. And I'm ready to win. I think Ellie's ready to win too.
Oh, I know so.
Hello friends, my name is Rachel Shumway, here to help you set loving boundaries so you can have the best relationship with the most important person in your life, you. Because when you uphold your boundaries, you gain the courage to open up and let yourself be seen, loved, and supported. Through a mix of coaching, cognitive restructuring, and step-by-step conversation strategies, which all starts with my free 4-step badass boundaries process, I give type A, really like type awesome women, the tools to bring confidence into their relationships with authenticity and ease. You can get started by grabbing your free starter kit on how to badassify your boundaries by clicking on the link in the show notes to get started. See you soon!
Hey there, friend. If you're resonating with this conversation and feeling the full body yes of this work, I would love to hear from you. So please do feel free to reach out. My book will be out in paperback in a couple of weeks, but if you can't wait, the e-version is available right now, today, on my website, and it's compatible with all Apple, Android, and e-reader devices. You'll find all the links you need in the show notes and on the blog. I want to thank you so much for listening, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with you.
Well, and one of the words that we've been using a lot of on the conversation today has been courage. And I love how when we start these things, because for my listeners, they know I rarely have the questions sort of pre-planned. It's way more fun to just show up and have a cup of coffee with amazing guests and see where things go. But courage has been one of those things that I've thought a lot about, because and rather than use the word courage in my value set, I chose the word brave, because bravery is to do acts of courage. And I was like, well, that's kind of where I want to be, right? That it does take courage, but I also want to be in the doing, but I come from a very masculine energy space, especially when I was working for myself. I did a lot of doing and not a lot of being. And so learning to combine the two and sort of marry the two has been quite a challenge. But I think it's really important. And I love, Erin, that you brought this up a couple times. It does take courage. And so for the listener who's listening, the reason you feel fear is because we all feel fear, right? As we're stepping out and ready to share our story and talk about it and make the change, those things do take a lot of courage, and they are effing scary, right? There's no other way to say it whenever you put your stuff out there. There is that little, hit and fear, but I think we have to anyway. And it's, whether you, believe in the past life thing and why there might be good reason. I know that at least for me, I do. And so there's good reason for why I'm nervous to share my voice, because it probably cost me a lot in previous times. And I have to remind myself constantly that it's safe to share. And one of, I think, the biggest hurts that the patriarchy has done is it has pitted women against women. And I think that goes back to the witch burning, where we were encouraged to tell on our friends. And so there's a deep, unhealed mistrust amongst women that if I show up and I share my magic with you in secret, which is the sisterhood, right? If we, beyond the popularized sisterhood, like really, if I share my magic with you, then you're going to turn me in, right, to daddy, and it's going to be a bad thing. It's going to cost me. And I know even, I would say 10 years ago, I felt like that mistrust was there bigger than it is now. I think a lot of us women are sort of stepping out saying, you might turn me in, but I think I'm going to show up anyway and tell you my truth. And like I said earlier, right, have those conversations where I really want to be friends with you, like deep trust with you, trust that you can see all the parts of me and accept me. And I think a lot of that comes to the fact that a lot of us women have really done the work to be okay with that. So we're not sharing it to find relief from our stuff, right? And therefore put the burden of our healing on someone else. We're sharing it saying, I've done the work, I'm healed, but there are still things I want to share with you so I can go to the next level by walking alongside of somebody. And I feel like that's what you two are definitely doing, certainly with your program, but certainly with each other. So you're living out your program, but even in women like us coming together and saying, here's what I really think about the world, right? And seeing what the other one has to say.
Do you think some of that, like that big shift, because I totally agree with you, there has been a shift in the last 10 years about how women can show up with other women, and I'd love your thoughts. Do you think it's got anything to do with the Me Too movement? Because just thinking about like the time frame and everything like that, it seems sort of almost to be like once there was this understanding that lots of people, and it wasn't even about sharing exactly what everyone had been through, but there was kind of this like almost hands up that everyone had been through something, and it kind of created this bond that we weren't on our own, that we weren't the only people going through this misogyny, sexual, like whatever it was that was your story that brought you. And I know many of my friends and people that I've known and everything like that, what a sliding scale of how they've been impacted or not at all, but there was about this sort of collective movement where women were like, hang on a minute, there's a awful lot of women who've been treated really, really badly. Do you like how I phrased that?
Yes, really badly. Yes, I like how you're trying to be very, very polite right now.
Yes, I'm being very polite.
British off you, darling.
Very angry about it. Like we suddenly realised that this wasn't just, it wasn't just me who'd felt it and the people that I have a glass of wine with or have a cup of tea with. This was global. This was at every level. This was some of the most famous people in the world, down to like it suddenly created this platform where everybody's voice counted. And I wonder how much that has kind of sort of broken down some of that that distrust of other women, because we've kind of opened up a little bit. What are your thoughts? Do you think that could have been something to do with it?
I think that certainly had a piece of it. I also think that there was this other movement. So there was sort of simultaneously these other movements where we as women realized that we had been pitted against each other and told to stay silent, right? Because of what people would say and that sort of thing. And it was always the women I feared. Like when I wanted to go talk about my sexual assault or my own Me Too movement, I was more afraid of what the women would say. Right? Well, what did you do? What were you wearing? I was like, right. It was not the men I was afraid of. It was the women I was afraid of what they would say and what they would perceive of me, and would I not be allowed in the groups and that kind of thing. But I think it was definitely also, we saw a rise of, we came to realize, at least I did, that if it was bad for those of us, with privilege, other minority groups said, it's bad for you, it's worse for us. And so we saw, some of these other movements, Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ community, like some, this trans energy that's been coming through. And so it was sort of like one toppled the other, right? If it's been bad for you, it's also been bad for me. And I think as women, we've done what we've done for eons and centuries. We went, wow, we can do a change with this, right? We can't always stand up for ourselves, and the Me Too movement may have petered out, but then these other movements showed up, and I know a lot of moms were suddenly advocating for their children to have a different, we couldn't do it for ourselves, but we could certainly do it for our children. Other, like, does that make sense? I feel like there was this crescendo that came through and said, well, actually, we've all been shut down, and said, what will people think, and that sort of thing. And I think that's maintained the movement and allowed further opening, right? If my neighbor can come out as trans and be accepted, how much more so can I say, this happened to me and I want this for my life? Does that make sense? So we've sort of come out in force. All of those things that were tried to push down have continued to move together. What are your thoughts, Erin? I'm curious.
I think you're both absolutely right. I think those glimpses of shared humanity, like those that recognition in each other, that actually there is deep trauma caused by others, right? Like, it wasn't something that we did wrong, it was something that was wronged to us. And I think those glimpses allow us to fear staying the same more than fearing change.
Oh,
right.
I knew, Ellie. I mean, I know you wanted to say something, but I'm like, Erin is going to like wrap it up and like zing.
This is what she does. She just takes all of the words and just, yeah.
So good.
Carry
so good.
I'm just going to stop talking now.
No, but I think that's so important.
Talking.
Like you temper the energy, because that's often what I feel like. And for me, it's because the pendulum, I was silent for so long that now it's swung the other way, that I'm like, should I say anything? Because I feel like I'm going to piss people off. And at the same time, I feel like, yes, but the light, sometimes our light makes people uncomfortable. And I know that was the case for me. There's a beautiful woman in my space, and she has a company called Integrity Seminars. Integrity was a challenge for me for so long. Not because I didn't want to live in integrity or because I didn't want to be honest or transparent. It's because I was so wounded that I didn't know how to be honest. It was like, I got to peel back all of these layers, and I can't tell you no, and I can't tell you yes. And I've said yes to this, and I've said yes to this, and now there's a conflict because I'm double committed and I don't know how to say no to either of you. Does that make sense? It was a big, awful mess because I hadn't stopped to do the deep healing work with myself. And so, of course, attending a seminar called Integrity Seminars was ridiculously hard. And I said, how can you live in integrity and name something integrity? Like, you're just going to, we're going to destined to fail. Fast forward a few years, and I've done some deep healing work. And now it's one of my favorite places to be, because one of the things she asks is, what are you pretending not to know? And I feel like that's it. That's it right there. It's, what are we pretending not to talk about? What are we pretending, not to move forward into? And we can't have, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's this amazing coming together where we're finally like, there.
Yeah. Like this conversation gives you permission to share more than you might otherwise give yourself, and more of these conversations are happening, right? And I see that in Ellie all the time, where we talk with our clients, and she'll ask a question, and you can immediately see them start to unfurl, because they're like, oh wait, I can be that here. And it's not about what we do in the world, it's how we are in the world that matters, right? And so really understanding that actually I can do all of the things that seem like I'm in integrity, but unless I'm being in integrity with myself, I can't be in integrity with others. Right? It's just not possible. So it's really about understanding that actually how we show up, how we be in the world, that is the crucial piece around whether or not we create space for others and whether we create space for ourselves to expand into who we need to be for ourselves and others. Sorry, Ellie, I know you wanted to say something.
No, I haven't. I think that integrity piece is really fascinating. And I can't imagine there's one listener who'd be like, that's not an important thing to me. I don't care if I don't act in integrity. Like, it's such a powerful and important word. And yet exactly what you say, getting to a space where you can truly be in it, I think is one of the biggest challenges, because it makes you question all of those things that you don't want to question. You don't want to have to stand up and have a different voice and have a different opinion to people. And that is really, really challenging on occasions. And sometimes it's easier to be quiet and to just go with the flow. And I can totally understand why people do that. There have been situations in my life recently where I've had to, wind my neck in, keep quiet, and and not show up in the vein that I would like to. And it hurts because it's going against who I am, but it's not just about me sometimes. And I think that's the juggling act. That's the balance that we have to find, is that, we live our lives with other people. There are other people who are impacted by what we do, and finding that balance and finding that space where you can completely express your truth and know that you're fully supported is incredible. But it's also a challenge, and everybody has to work to it. So, if you have partners and if you have family, like, there is an ongoing journey. And so when we go on this journey as women to become more authentic and be ready to speak our truth, we don't realize, and it was shown to me in a deeply uncomfortable manner recently, that actually there are people who are close to you who will not like what you say. And actually that is something that you have to work through, and it's kind of like you have to suddenly almost explain yourself. And that felt just like that created conflict within me. I was like, hang on a minute. Like, it brought up all of this stuff. So this isn't an easy journey. And that's why I firmly believe that when you do the work, you do it with other people who can help hold your hand, so that when that happens, when you are put in a situation where all of the things that you've been working on that you think you've nailed, I was like, I've sorted this out. Yeah, there's no chance. It's not done. But
I'm like that when I just talk with Erin, right? I'm a little nervous. I'm going to say something, then she's like, and I'm like, oh, damn it. I'm about to get reframed, which I totally love. And it's one of my favorite things, because how many of us don't speak up our truth or don't have friends that would tell me the truth? And I've got one in my life right now, and she will call me, and I can tell she's about to tell me a truth, which I just love. And I laugh whenever she says something that would be highly offensive a few years ago, because I'm like, thank you for calling me out. I don't really want these friends that are like, it's all good, right? The fawning. This is a new word for me. I didn't know what it was. And for those listeners, I did a whole podcast on it. But fawning is like when you normalize, try to make the relationship comfortable again because you're worried about it. It was such an interesting space to be like, I fawn in so many different spaces. And this is me coming out of 14 weeks plus 2 years plus of healing. I was like, what do you know? That was so far in the I can't even see it. And this is why we need these women friends who step up and say, I love you, but this is happening. Did you know? Oh, you didn't know. Okay, let me reframe that for you. And Erin, I feel like that's what you do.
Thanks. I think.
She does that very, very well.
Yeah. I think what Ellie was just saying is kind of like that. We talk about the wise woman, and obviously our business is Awakening the Wise Woman. That's our brand, and that's born from a conversation about why should we wait to be considered the wise woman? Why can't we share our wisdom before, menopause and old age and all of the things hit us? And so that, that was kind of the birthing of what we do together in the world. But actually we're much more concerned with the modern wise woman rather than the wise woman archetype, because that wise woman archetype does have that woundedness of saying, actually, I don't care what other people think of me. I'm just going to say it. And I don't care if that upsets people. And and realistically, like we can live in that energy in moments. But if we live in that energy all of the time, the world's not ready for that. No. The world is not ready for that. And we aren't ready for the impact of that.
No, we aren't.
Because, and so we have to honor the fact that actually, yes, the wise woman is necessary. It is absolutely necessary for us to share our wisdom with the world, what we know to be true for us, because that gives people permission to test whether it's true for them. Right. And that's an important process. And it's going to be even more important as we move forward and we collectivize and we change. But if we go fully into that energy and forget that there is, the maiden who desires wisdom and knowledge and wants to go out in the world and seek and learn and those sorts of things. And, the various energies like the mother that wants to nurture and care, we can't be fully in that wise woman archetype. We can't allow that to be the thing that leads us forward fully. Like we have to engage all parts of ourselves. And so the challenge really is about knowing how to find the harmony between all of the different parts of us that need to come forward so that we can be in our power, so that we can stand in integrity, so that we can be authentic and be true to who we are, but also honor the fact that we are humans living in a human society that isn't ready for everything that we are, and that doesn't want to give us permission to be that yet. And so all we as mothers, especially, our role is to create enough waves, enough movement, enough change that our children can step in and make bigger ones, and their children can step in and do the same.
Okay. I think that's stunningly beautiful. And all I could think about as you were talking was, obviously 4 months ago, I welcomed a brand new baby into the world. And just because I knew I was carrying life did not show up for 9.5 weeks, right? Or 9.5 months, right? And that was crazy, right? So I think we have to remember that a big part of being a woman and living in our feminine energy is, yes, we take action. Yes, we hold space. But a lot of what being a woman is holding space and waiting for that moment to push forward, right? And I think that women often ask me, they're like, well, I don't just want to sit on the sidelines. And I'm like, I know, but the masculine is the one that moves forward and charge forward and provides and this sort of thing. Like that's the energy of the masculine. The feminine waits, and then in the moment does the push and goes to the next level. And then in the moment does the next space. It's just about this holding space, allowing for more, and then, and respecting the flow, right? I think a lot of times, we as women, because we're trying so hard to be something, that we forget that we already are. And I love that you guys talk about wisdom, because wisdom is one of these things that you typically get after your teeth have been kicked in a few times. And so for most of us, because of our moments, our Me Too moments, and some of these things that we've endured, you already have a wisdom. And so it's really about unlocking it. But I think part of, and I grew up very, conservative Christian, but I'm thinking about something where they say, don't throw your pearls before swine. And I think something that comes with wisdom is knowing when to speak and when not to speak. But the difference is when you're healed and you know it, sometimes you'll think there and go, I could say something, but I'm not going to say something because I rob you of the gift of learning it. Or you're not quite ready and you will be ready. And then you'll come to me and you'll ask, and then I'll move forward. And then you'll move with me because you take that time. Yeah. On that note. Anything else we should leave the listeners with? I know we could talk for forever, so we'll have to do this. But anything else you guys want to, I'm just going to leave you the floor, and if something you want to add or, share, let's do that now.
I think what you just said there was absolutely beautiful and a great space to leave the conversation. There is so much wisdom in waiting for the right time. And sometimes that feels like, is it ever going to happen? Just trust that it is. Just trust that there is going to be the moment when it is time for you to, whether it's, go deeper into the work, whether it's stand up and share a truth, whatever it is, just trust that the nudges will be there. And the more in tune you are with who you are, the more connected you are to your inner wisdom, the more time you allow yourself to this growth and development and expansion, the easier it will be to pick up on those signs and know when it's your turn to step up. And thank you so much for holding the space for us today. It's been a beautiful conversation, and hopefully we can come back again. And Erin, I'm sure you've got a beautiful way to bring it all together. So the floor
bring it home, sister.
is yours.
No pressure.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the reason, like, the feminine that you were talking about there, and that beautiful capacity for allowing and patience and being open to receiving, like that is divine, right? That's why they call it the divine feminine. And alongside divine feminine comes divine timing. And it's about really acknowledging that there will be a time when you are called forward. There is also a time for the person next to you to be called forward, and for whatever reason, right? And so we have to honor that toing and froing and that exchange of energy and that constant fluidity. And if we don't do that, then we're so far in our own wounded energy that we can't see it, right? Because we don't need to be the person at the top. There is no top here.
There's no top here. Yes, thank you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to honor the fact that actually for everybody to rise, sometimes we have to wait for others to catch up.
Yes.
Right. Sometimes we have to be the person helping them up, but other times we just have to stand there and hold the space that they're walking into. And either way, we just get to be ourselves. We just get to be who we are and navigate our own journey and trust that someone's doing the same for us. Yeah. And that's all I have to say.
Mic drop. So good. Yes, and for my listeners and for you ladies as well, I chatted with my beautiful producer Angel, who makes this podcast possible. And we are already discussing our plans for September, October, November, and your names were on that. So yes, we will be having you back if you'll come back.
Of course.
I'd love to.
Perfect. I want more of this in my life. Honestly, I was like a kid in the candy shop going downstairs to get this podcast recording done so we could just spend time together. So thank you so much for both coming on today, but also for what you ladies are doing in the world. And for my listeners, I'm going to encourage you to check in the show notes for the links to Awakening the Wise Woman. Follow these women on their socials. Stay in touch. I mean, they're up to big things. And a big thing for me, ladies, is, after we have a conversation like this, which can be, catalytic for change, right? Maybe inspire someone and they're going to, think about it. That we have a place for them to go, right? If they feel that nudge to go and learn more and find a safe space to unpack the baggage and become the woman that they want to be. So I'm, again, nudging all my listeners to go and check you guys out. But thank you again for coming on and being a part of the show.
Yeah,
awesome.
Always a pleasure, and it's a genuine privilege to share space with you. So thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. And for the rest of the listeners, you know the drill. Like, share, comment, pass it along. It means the world for those of us taking time to put out the kind of content that we are. We're showing up in a big way. So meet us there. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you all on the flip side.